Hello, everybody. How are you? Welcome to the 3 a.m. Knitter Podcast. My name is Anne, and I am thrilled to be joining you today to chat about some projects that I'm working on and projects that I'm finished and some dream knitting and all of the things surrounding our knitting. So welcome. I hope that today finds you happy and well and getting some time to sit down with your knitting needles and work on that project that you've got on the go. So if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm so happy to see you again. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I hope that you enjoy the podcast. Let me know what you think by throwing a comment down below and even liking and subscribing. So let's get rolling with this episode of the 3 a.m. Knitter. If you would like to join me over on Instagram, you can find me there as 3am Knitter. My email address is 3amknitter@gmail.com. And for those of you who need my mailing address, you'll find that down below as well. You can find me over on Patreon as well, where I am offering up 3 levels of subscription on Patreon, just starting to get that rolling. So if this is something that you would be called to join me with, please pop on over there. I'll put the link below and you can take a look at that opportunity. Also, big news, although I ran into a couple of delays, as those returning viewers will know, finally, last night, the Open My Heart sock pattern has launched over on Ravelry. So the link to that is down below as well in the show notes, and all of my subscribers will find a wee little discount as a thank you for joining me. So you can use that discount code for purchasing the pattern, getting 10% off. So I hope that you take advantage of that and enjoy working on the pattern. You'll see over on Ravelry that there are a number of pictures from my test knitters who did such a beautiful job working up the socks, and I am sure that you're going to love it. So take advantage of that if you are called to do so. All right, so let's dive in. What am I wearing? So some of you may recognize this from a number of episodes ago. I've had this on for quite a while this morning, and it's getting a little warm. So this is the coffee break shawl. As you can see, I've been wearing it, so it's a little bit wrinkly. So this was a project that I worked on as part of a knit along held by my LYS, Natural Ewe Yarns, here in Pictou, Nova Scotia. And it was a project using minis, like one main color and a bunch of minis, as you can see, and the various sections with various textures and what have you. I'm quite pleased with the way mine turned out. The colors are, although I was unsure about them in the beginning, the colors are great. That pop of yellow there, and the various blues, and the textures are fabulous. So this is a paid-for pattern. However, bear with me just 1 second. I'll bring up the details on that. I should have had that ready. Sorry about that. Coffee break shawl. There we go. Yes, I did mean the coffee break shawl. Excuse me. So this is a pattern by Heidi and Lana, done in fingering weights. Approximately 845 meters of yarn altogether, or 924 yards. It's done in fingering, as I said, using a 3.75 millimeter needle, or 5 US. Let's see. What does she say here? Coffee break shawl features a perfect blend of color and texture, making it a relaxing, fun knit for the coffee break moments in your life. Now, I can attest to that. It was a fun knit. Wasn't boring at all because of the difference in the textures and the patterns. There are 22 projects on Ravelry, mine being one of them, and a variety of colorways. So I encourage you, if you are interested, to pop on over to Ravelry and just search coffee break shawl, and you can check that out. So this was a really, really fun project. It was great to work on it with other people from my LYS, see all the different color combinations. It's amazing to me how one pattern can look so different based on color choices or even gauge. I know somebody who was participating used a larger needle size, so their shawl was much larger. It's just, yeah, it was a great project and really a fabulous way to use up mini skeins. And that was the whole purpose of the knit-along, was to be able to use up the mini skeins that perhaps you get in advent calendars and things like that. So this portion right here was my favorite part, with a little bit of texture there. It was so nice and so fun to knit. So anyway, that's the coffee break shawl. And even though I was wearing it, I am going to take it off now. And I'll just very artfully drape it right there so you can see it. All right. So that's what I'm wearing. The other thing that I'm wearing that I wanted to point out, now I talked about this before. This is from the lovely Mable and Rose Handmade. Mable and Rose. So this Mable and Rose Handmade is a Nova Scotia maker, because you know that I am wildly passionate about supporting Nova Scotia and Canadian makers. And this piece is one of her original pieces that when I saw it, I just knew that I had to have it. Look at that. Isn't that something else? So pretty. So pretty. Oh, yeah. So Mable and Rose has an Etsy shop, and you can find all of her amazing creations there. So not only does she make these beautiful what's the word I'm looking for? Jewelry, thank you. Art jewelry pieces. She also makes some amazing knitting notions things that I'll show you a few of them in just one moment. But yeah, so I can't find the link here, but you know what? I will link to her shop down in the show notes, and you can take a look at her work there. But yeah, so you can find her on Instagram as @Mable_and_Rose, and is the word, not the ampersand. Online, Mable and Rose Handmade .etsy.com, and her email address is ilonarosie.creates@gmail.com. So I'll put all of this information down in the show notes, plus the link to her Etsy shop. But there is her little card. And there's my beautiful necklace. Ooh, I love it so much. Love it so much. So that's what I'm wearing. This is not knitting, but handmade, and it's beautiful. All right, let's jump into works in progress. So the first work in progress I want to show you is my socks. And I have not got hardly anywhere with them. So this project is pattern number 2 of the Curious Handmade Sock Society number 5. Whoops. So, of course, I only brought the one that I had finished up. No, that's her. Fern, where are you, Fern? No, okay. So the Handmade Sock Society is created by the fabulous pattern maker, Curious Handmade, Helen Stewart. And first of all, you know, I am a new designer. Helen Stewart is kind of my guru of pattern design. Her patterns are second to none. They are written so beautifully. She has beautiful photography and runs this Handmade Sock Society. This is the 5th time. Basically what it is it's a collection of 6 patterns that are released 1 per month for 6 months. And currently we're on pattern number 2 called the Feather Vein Socks. So you can see them there. Mid-calf, they've got a beautiful design on the front of the leg and the top of the foot. There's a better view of what the pattern looks like. Just so excited to be knitting these. I did one of her sock societies before and loved it. And whoops, this is how far I've gotten on pattern number 2. I've really just started it. So I've got the cuff done and I'm ready to start working on the pattern. So it's a twisted 1x1 twisted rib is the cuff. Now it is a paid for pattern, so I'm not going to give away too much. But it comes in 3 sizes. There is a chart in this one. And you can check it out on Instagram. There is a hashtag. I think it's hashtag Feather Vein Socks, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, like I say, I've just started and I am using from Stash this beautiful gray. Okay, so I'm just trying to see. Yeah, that's close. So this is a fingering or a sock weight yarn from one of my favorite Canadian dyers. And of course, I've talked about her a number of times, the Songbird Yarn and Fibers from Stratford, Ontario. So this is in the charcoal. It's her sock in the charcoal colorway. Usually I buy her very fancy dyed yarn, but you know, this time I think I don't know why I bought the plain. I think I was doing a shawl or something originally, but now I've decided to do these socks out of it. So that is her 80/20 marine sock, 80/20 sock, merino nylon, 115 grams per skein, which is about 390 meters or so. I don't have the yard conversion for that, but absolutely loving this yarn. I mean, it's merino, right? So it's so soft, and although I haven't got too far on this sock yet, I've used this yarn before, so I know it just feels so good in your hand. But while I was looking up the details of the sock yarn to share with you, of course I was on her website. I didn't buy anything yet, but I came across this. So she has these new colorways called it's a Parliament of Owls, gray-horned owl, barn owl, and snowy owl. Can you even imagine knitting with those? Look at that. So beautiful. Just so beautiful. And then there was this other one as well, Turkey Vulture. Look at the browns and the pinks. Oh, so gorgeous. I'll link to her website down below so you can go check her out. I just love, love, love Songbird Fibers, and I know you will too. If you haven't had the opportunity to see her yarns in person, make every effort that you can to do so, because her yarns and her dyeing is gorgeous. So anyway, I digress. I digress. So that is project number 1, work in progress. Now, sorry, I'm just looking around the floor here for project number 2. And, oh, I'm sorry, I have to get up for just one moment. Sorry about that. Yes. Okay, so, sorry, project number 2. I showed you this before. I am working on the Dazzling Diamond Vest. This is going to be a summer top. And it's a drops pattern, and I'm using the Cascade Sunseekers in Melon colorway. So I've got only just one picture up on Ravelry, which I think I showed you before, which is this one, or it could be on Instagram. I can't recall. But oh, there's my DPNs. Let me just put those aside. All right. So this is a free pattern, so I can't complain too much. There's the Cascade Sunseekers. You see it's got a little bling in it, which I think is going to be fun. Yeah. All right. So I am not a huge fan of this pattern. I think I'm going to be a huge fan of the pattern when it's done, but I'm not a huge fan of the pattern the way it's written. That's the thing. It's got a lot of charts, very little instruction, but a lot of charts. And the charts are not those kind of charts where you knit on the right side and you get a rest on the way back. So here was the first piece that I knit up. So you can see it's got a distinct diamond design. So half of the diamond is garter stitch and half of it is stockinette with a double decrease kind of in the center. And then here's, I had only a short piece of yarn when I was instructed to take this off. This is part of the back, right, with some garter stitch edge. And then I've got just the next part just started on my needles. I don't know what's the right side and what's the wrong side, but yeah. So like I say, I think I'm going to be pleased with the top once it's done, but it's like chart, and the way that the instructions are written is, for example, where's my page? A2 and A3. Okay, so for example, you start with chart A2, then you do A4 in the middle, then you do A3 on the end. Then you go back, you do A3, A4, A2, etc., etc. But at the same time, you read from left to right on the right side, then from right to left on the wrong side. So not only are you changing the stitches, because of course there's a glossary for the stitches, like the knit and the purl, depending on what side you're on, but you're also flipping between charts. So you'll see I've got this like sticky where it's like, you know, A6, A4, A7, and then on the right side you do, then on this one, A2, A4, A3, on the wrong side, A3, A4, A2. So there's just a lot of mind stuff going on with, it's not that it's difficult, like the stitching itself, the knitting itself is not difficult. There's just a lot of mind stuff going on. So this is not a project that I can take to knit night with me. This is not a project that I can watch TV because I'm constantly looking down. But like I say, once I get this done, I think I will love it. And I'm aiming to have it done in the next couple of weeks because I'd like to have it for July and August, right? So bear with me with this one. I'll let you know how it's going. And of course, I'm holding it in one of my beloved Be By Design totes. So this is technically a tote, but I use it as a knitting bag for bigger projects. And it's my lovely friend Bridget who makes these bags from Ontario. She is just lovely. I'll link to her shop down below. Oh, and also I should have mentioned that my other whip is in a Be By Design bag as well. So this is a smaller project bag, and it's got the suede that you can pull tight, and then this acts as a handle. So, excuse me, those are my works in progress. However, I did want to share with you a little bit about the Noctuidae, my long-term work in progress. Sorry, wow. So this is by my chair downstairs, which is probably not the best place for it because this, again, is not a project that is great for watching TV. So you will recall, because I've talked about this one a number of times, the Noctuidae is my long-term project for this year. It hasn't been getting some love, but it is starting to get some more love. However, so on my project page in Ravelry, or on Ravelry, we've got, there's my, I swatched. There are the different yarns that I'm using. This one right here, one of the contrast colors from my my LYS, Natural Ewe Yarns. This is the main color. And then the minis here, plus my beloved Malabrigo in Archangel, my most favorite colorway of all time. So here's the problem with this. I picked it up again and started working on it. And I'm at a part in the yoke where it's 3 colors per row. So the color work is 3 colors per row. And I've stopped because, not because I don't like the colors, I've stopped because of the tension. So let me see if I can. Usually my tension, whether it's in color work or anything else, is bang on. I am blessed with being able to keep my tension almost perfect. But what I'm noticing here is, I don't know if this is good. Yeah, you see right here, so look at there. So that's popping out. This is a little bit tight. I'm not wildly happy with the tension. And I know that sometimes when you block it out, it works its way out. But this sweater is one of those sweaters where I don't know. Can you see it a little bit better there? See how it's kind of, yeah. With this sweater and all the work that's going to go into this because of the intense color work, I don't know that I want to take the chance that I work through it all and that the tension's bad and that I can't block it out. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to pull it back to probably to here. So I'm going to pull all this out. All of this, it's probably 20 rows. And I'm going to put on bigger needles and see what happens, right? What do you think? What do you think? Give me your opinion. Give me some thoughts. It's just, this is such an epic knit for me that I would hate for it not to turn out the way that I want it to. What do you think? Let me know. Anyway, so that still is a work in progress, but it's in timeout until I kind of wrap my head around ripping it back. All right. So that's it for works in progress for now. There are others, but you know, we'll stop at that. Finished objects. Now I showed you last episode that I had finished one sock of the first pattern of the Curious Handmade Secret Sock Society, but I have now finished the pair. Here we go. So I did show you these last time, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on them, but I've blocked them out. Here they are. These are the Shadow Box Socks, patterned by Helen Stewart, of course. Let's see if I actually, yes, I do. So I knit them on 2.25 millimeter needles or US size 1. They are in the Songbird fibers. Here we go again. 80/20 sock in the brown-headed cowbird colorway. It's got some delicious looking brown in there and the teal, and oh, it's so nice. I used 115 grams, 390 meters or 426 yards. And again, it's part of Helen Stewart's Handmade Sock Society 5. So paid for pattern. You can buy the individual patterns, not yet, but once the Sock Society is done, I think she releases the patterns individually, but you can still get in on the 6 pattern collection. So there is the pattern was released on May the 4th. The ones that I'm working on now, the Feather Vein socks, was released on June the 1st. And then the next one comes out on the 6th of July. So there are 6 patterns that are released, 1 per month. So you can still get in on it. 18 British pounds or $31.56 Canadian for 6 patterns. That's not bad. That's a pretty good value. So I'll put a link to that down, of course, in the show notes. But I'm really, really pleased with these. I love the texture on them. And I don't know that you can see, but it is a little bit of open work. Like there is, you see that? Yeah. So it was a fun knit. I enjoyed it a lot. And I will be gifting these to my mom. So lucky mom, unlucky me. Maybe I'll make another pair for myself. So that is finished object number 2. Did I say I only had one finished object? I have one hanging right in front of me that I wanted to show you. This is an old finished object, and technically it's from Whip Mountain. I have another thing from Whip Mountain to show you, but this is a bulky weight, short-sleeved cardie that I have 99% finished. So it's color work. You can see, I'll show you the back so you can see the color work a little bit better. It's a fun motif. So, you know, solid, a lot of ribbing. I put the contrast color as the cast off edge on the bottom. So I did the ivory there, and then on the sleeves I did the tan. So short sleeve cardie, raglan construction, and I had originally, you see that I haven't totally done anything with these yet because I just wanted to put these on to see if I liked them. So I've got these toggles here. I'm not digging them. I think I'm going to take these off and I'm going to get different buttons for it. But yeah, so I'm going to call this done. I just have to pick the buttons or select the buttons. Short sleeve cardie, going to be great for sitting outside. I'm pretty pleased with it. I have no idea what the pattern is. If I can find it on Ravelry, I will link to it below. I know that this is acrylic yarn. I had it in my stash. Don't know if I have any left. But yeah, it was stash yarn that I just wanted to use up. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed the pattern. Kept me interested. You didn't get too bored with just straight old stockinette stitch. Yeah. So I'm pretty pleased with that. but I'll decide on the buttons. Watch my Instagram feed and we'll see about the buttons on that one. So if I can find the pattern, I'll let you know, but otherwise it's just a pattern. All right. So next we've got Whip Mountain, and I pulled out this pattern out of Whip Mountain. This is called the Mount Lorne Pullover by Andrea Cull. I don't know if you have seen that. Do you know what? That's this pattern. Look at that. So I must have taken the pattern for some sort of short sleeve sweater like this and added in the motif, the color work from the Mount Lorne pullover, because look at that. It's the same, isn't it? Huh. I might have just solved the mystery. Anyhow, Mount Lorne pattern by Andrea Cull. Let's see what I got here. No. Do I have it? Feather vein there? No. I just want to look to see if I actually have a project page for this. Hang on just one sec. Oh my Lord, I do. There it is. Okay, so this is a sweater that I started in November of 2020, November the 30th, 2020. I'm making the XL size. The needles being used are 3.5, 3.75, and 4 millimeter needles, or US 4, 5, and 6. I'm using Cascade 220 Superwash and Diamond Luxury Pure Wool Superwash. Okay, so the black and the cream are Cascade, and the yellow is Diamond Luxury Superwash. And I bought all of these at Galt House of Yarn in Cambridge, Ontario. All right, so here's what I've got so far. And I don't know, I don't know. So yeah, Cascade, kind of squished up there. Cascade 220 Superwash Merino. It's a great yarn, love it. Obviously not enough to finish the project, but here we go. So, oh, this is off the needles. Obviously I needed the needle for something else. All right, so you can see how long it's been in Whip Mountain because it's squishy. Oh, this is so soft. All right, so it's a pullover. You see the bottom. It's got a little color work there. And here in the top, I've started the color work. Okay, the sleeves are attached. Both sleeves are attached. Now, I think what's bothering me about this is it looks like Charlie Brown. The yellow and the black looks like Charlie Brown. Oh, you know what? I'm such a good knitter. Oh, I do love it. Like, look at that. It's... All right, so here's my question. Do I finish it? Yeah, I'm going to finish it. So that's going to go in the work in progress pile. This pattern, which apparently I love because I used it on the other thing. Let me just get some information about it. It is a paid for pattern. Oh my, why? All right. It's an interweave winter 2018. It says that this pattern is $18.75 US dollars, or $26.12. I can't imagine that I paid that for a sweater pattern, but one never knows. Okay, so details about the pattern is for an intermediate knitter, but honestly, there's only 2 colors in the color work rows. So I think that if you're an adventurous beginner, you could do this. Absolutely. I know for a fact that I'm using two-handed Fair Isle technique for this, because that's how I do color work. That's only 2 colors per row. There's lots of sizes. 36, bust size 36, 42, 46, 52, and 56. So if you were making this as an outdoor sweater that you wanted a lot of positive ease, you could certainly do that. The gauge is 20 stitches and 28 rounds for 4 inches in stockinette stitch, and 21 stitches and 22 rounds for 4 inches in color work. So it's important to swatch for this. She has a couple of notes here that say the body and the sleeves of this pullover are worked in the round from the bottom up to the yoke. Then the pieces are joined, as you saw in my project. And then the yoke is worked circular. She makes a note that she goes up a needle size for stranded knitting. Please check your gauge. So 110 projects on Ravelry, mine being one of them. It looks like a lot of people have worked the sweater. Some people have done it as a cardigan, so I would imagine they steeked it. Some people have only used 2 colors, which I'm wondering if I should have done. Anyway, I'll link to the pattern below, although I'm not happy about the cost of the pattern. But anyway, the Mount Lorne pullover, which apparently I like this motif here. So check that out. I'll link to it below for you. So I think I will migrate that to the works in progress. So before we get to our episode of The Power of Sticks and Strings this week, I wanted to talk to you about the giveaway that I did to celebrate the 1,000+ subscribers to my YouTube channel. So I had 5 giveaways, and 3 people have contacted me, and I have got their prizes sent out. But there were 2 prizes that weren't claimed. And I had said in the last episode of the podcast that I would give everybody until this recording, which actually ended up being an extra week because I'm about a week late due to family visiting and things like that. So I gave an extra week, but the other 2 people did not contact me. So to that end, I do still have, let me take a sip of my coffee here. I do still have 2 prizes to give away. So the lovely Mable and Rose Handmade, you will perhaps recall, provided this scissor or tool keeper chain that you can attach to your project bag, and it keeps your scissors handy. It's got a little pink seahorse on it, so cute. And you know, I talked about Mable and Rose earlier. She made my beautiful necklace. So this is still up for grabs, and the skein of Natural You, my LYS, Natural You, Morning Fog, Pure and Simple Fingering, Untreated Merino. So Morning Fog colorway. So this is the yarn that I use to do my last knit along with my LYS. I did the Aster Tea. There we go. I did the Aster Tea. How soon we forget, my gosh. So the Aster Tea is, oh, well, what the heck? Let me just bring it up here. Aster Tea. If you've watched the previous episodes, you will certainly recognize this. So there's my project right there. Come on, open up. Good Lord. Today Ravelry. There we go. So that is my Aster Tea. So this is the colorway right here in the main body. This is mountain or morning fog rather. And this is a skein of yarn that is 100 grams, 400 meters, so soft, untreated merino. So I will link to the Natural You website so you can take a look at their yarn, but this is up for grabs as well. So what I'd like to do, I have these two gifts still for the taking. Here's how you're going to get yourself entered. I want you to comment below about your favorite sock pattern. Psst, I just released a sock pattern. Your favorite sock pattern, why you like it. So that's it. Just what is your favorite sock pattern and why do you like it? Put it down in the comments below. Now, caveat, you must be a subscriber to the podcast. So believe me, I will check and I will draw before the next episode for those two prizes. So comment below, subscribe, tell your friends, and maybe you'll be getting the running for this great skein of yarn. This is 400 meters. You can make a great project with this. And I'm sorry, but everybody needs these, right? Being able to find your scissors in your project bag, you know what happens, right? You put your scissors in, they fall to the bottom. You got to dig down through the bottom of the project bag to find them. You stab yourself in the finger. That you need this, okay? So there's your chance to win a little prize. What is your favorite sock pattern? Why do you like it? All right. So I'm going to do the Knitter's Oracle now, the Knitter's Oracle reading now, and then we're going to pop over to watch the episode of The Power of Sticks and Strings with my lovely guest, Linda. Linda is talking to us about how knitting helps in the therapy process. She shares an amazing reading, a story at the end that I've heard her read it a couple of times. It's about her own experience, and every time I hear it, I just get choked up just listening to it. It's just beautiful. So I hope that you are really going to enjoy that. And I'm going to put all of Linda's contact information down below. She's written a book. She's got a website. She is over on Instagram, and you can check her out. But in the meantime, let's get on to our Knitter's Oracle. Okay, split the deck and draw. Oh, all right. This is an interesting card. This card is called the Twitter Knitters. The Twitter Knitters. I have no idea. Let's see what it reads here. What's shaken? Where the heck are my addies? Yarn is for losers and sheep stink. Oh, that's not nice. I told myself I could have one skein. Oops, that's the picture at the bottom. That's awesome. Okay, the Twitter Knitters. Let's read about that. Okay. It's number 12. The Twitter Knitters. Oh, the knitters on Twitter. Yes, we're still there, gabbing away. It's still the best place to get all the industry dirt. The Twitter Knitters represents just that, chattering gossip, the latest news, as well as the social environment that surrounds it, from the stitch and bitch to the kiki to the whispering in the kitchen at the dinner party. When this card comes out, it's time to tune into your crew and get the scuttlebutt, or maybe to give them something to talk about. That's cute. The Twitter Knitters. So I'm not a big Twitter person. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. I wish this was the Instagram knitters. Then maybe we'd have something to talk about. What about you? So what social media platforms do you use to get your knitting fix, right? For me, it certainly is Instagram, Ravelry as well, and of course the podcast. So, my podcast and all the others, my favorites, Grocery Girls, The Knitty Stew, Fairy Godfather, Sunday Knitting Society, like all of those, right? So where do you get your fix for knitting? Let me know down in the comments. So my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode, and I know that you're really, really going to enjoy listening to Linda over on the episode of The Power of Sticks and Strings, which will start right after we say our goodbyes. So stay tuned for that shortly, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing what you're knitting. In the meantime, take good care, keep knitting, and be well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Power of Sticks and Strings. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'd like to introduce my guest today, Linda Hershman. Now, this woman, Linda is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a AA MFT approved supervisor, the owner of Couples and Family Wellness Center, and the author of Grey Divorce, Everything You Need to Know About Later Life Breakups. I'll include all of the links to grab Linda's book in the show notes, so don't you guys worry about that. But Linda, I'd like to welcome you to this program and tell us a little bit about yourself that isn't kind of included in your signature. So jump right in.
Okay, first of all, Anne, thanks so much for having me on. This is an absolute delight since I do a lot of public speaking and podcasts, but I've never gotten to talk about knitting. So this is really exciting for me.
Excellent.
And okay, I guess I will tell you a little bit about my knitting journey. Something about me. I have kind of mad knitting skills, and I come from a family of knitters. My mother makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing, and my grandmother made her look like she didn't know what she was doing. They are and were amazing knitters. And when I was young, my mother periodically would sit down and try to teach me to knit. And I just never quite got it. I would start, I wanted to do it, but then after a couple of minutes, I would be like, yeah, no, I'm going out to play or read a book, bye. And then in the 1970s, when they started building casinos in Atlantic City, I'm from the Philadelphia area. So we're very close to Atlantic City, New Jersey. I went into a casino gift shop and I saw a sweater that I fell in love with. The sweater was $495. At that time, I was making $7,000 a year working full time. I looked at that sweater and I thought, if I ever want to have a sweater like that, I need to learn to knit. And I went back and I said, I'm ready. And I sat down. And of course, I did the obligatory practice scarf with all the holes and everything. But I picked it up right away after that. And my second piece was a sweater. And my next piece was that sweater.
Wow.
Which I still have, by the way.
That's amazing.
It's a little snug now, but I still have that sweater. Yeah, I'm not letting it go. It is very representative. And from there, I just kept going. I never stopped knitting after that.
That's amazing. You speak about that sweater, about, still having it. And in the last podcast episode, I was wearing a sweater that my grandmother knit me when I was 16 or 17 years old. And I still have that. And I'm 57 now. So it's an old sweater. And you know what? It's a little worse for wear. It's all pilly, and I'm afraid to use it, or to wear it often, because it was the last thing she knit for me, right? And so
Right.
we do attach to these tactile things, right? Yeah.
We do, but I also have to look at it that I'm worse for wear and I'm a little pilly now
Yeah,
too.
yeah, you me both, you me both. So,
But yet I still wake up every day and show myself in public.
right, right, don't we though, right? So, Linda, share with us if you can. So you picked the knitting up because you found that sweater that you really wanted to make for yourself. You knew you couldn't afford to purchase it, so you found the skill to make the sweater. Um, how else have you used this new skill that you finally embraced, if you will, to carry you through life?
For me personally, it's about connection.
Okay.
Knitting is one of my strongest links to my grandmother. And as you know, I have a piece I wrote after my grandmother died that I would be happy to share at the
Yeah,
end.
absolutely.
And it also is a really strong connection with my mother, who I'm very close to. And some of our closeness has come from our love of knitting and art and craft. And in fact, we, until the lockdown, we used to go to Florida every February for a week or 10 days or so, not together. She would stay with her sister. I would stay with my best friend from the time I'm 3 years old. But we always took a day. We have a yarn shop in Florida that we absolutely
Mm.
love, which sounds crazy. Why would you go to Florida to buy yarn? But neither one of us can wear anything with animal fibers in it.
Ah,
And the yarn shops in Florida are 90% non-wool.
okay.
So they're great places for us to shop. So we would always earmark a day that we would go to the yarn shop and we would stock up for the year. In February, we went to Los Angeles. We had some free time. What did we do with our free time? We went to a yarn shop. And so it's one of the things that connects me. It is in my work as a therapist. I deal with people going through a lot of really challenging transitions. As you said, gray divorce, the
Hmm.
definition of which is splitting up after age 50, is one of my areas of specialty. I'm also a certified trauma therapist. And so I have a lot of clients coming in with PTSD,
Okay.
anxiety, depression. And over the years, I have read a lot about the benefits of therapeutic knitting, which is actually a thing. There are evidence based studies. There's a lot of work coming out of England on the benefits of therapeutic knitting. There is there's research being done on knitting in prison systems, in hospitals, things like that. And so whenever there may be some interest, I encourage my clients to start knitting. And it's knitting more than I'm all about any craft, any
Hmm.
kind of creativity, anything that gets you out of the anxiety, the depression, and that left brain and gets you into your creative right brain and into flow.
Okay.
But knitting has very specific benefits and has to do with two needles.
Okay.
One of the benefits is the clicking of the needles. The sound of the clicking is very soothing and calming, and it helps reduce anxiety. But the other benefit is called bilateral stimulation, which is a very fancy way of engaging your brain alternately. So if you wanted to practice bilateral stimulation on your own, you could just tap back and forth. And bilateral stimulation is the foundation of the trauma work I do.
Mhm.
It allows material that is stored in the limbic system, in the old emotional part of the brain, to move into the prefrontal cortex, which is the logic center of the brain. And when that happens, you start to see things and process things differently. And so when you're working with two needles, you are inadvertently activating other parts of your brain that are going to help soothe and calm you.
Wow. That's fascinating.
And then the third benefit of knitting as opposed to other craft activities. So we've got the clicking of the needles, we've got the bilateral stimulation, and then we have the social aspect. If I were going to move to a new place, the first thing I would do was to go to a knitting store, because what we as knitters know is that you can walk into any knitting store anywhere, and what you will see is a table.
Yeah.
And around the table, you will see knitters. And so it's an immediate way to develop a community of people. And certainly when the people who come to see me for my work, they can use all the supports they're able to gather. And so knitting is a way of developing a support system and a way of socializing. And
100,
then
100%. I mean, I smile because, you say that about the social aspect. And just this past September, I moved from Ontario, Canada, to Nova Scotia, Canada. So I moved provinces. And the house that my partner and I purchased is on the same street as my local yarn store, which is in fact 4 houses down the street. I can see it from my window.
oh,
And that was totally
all right,
by
I'm hating
accident.
you a little
Yeah,
bit right
yeah.
now.
It was totally by accident. But you're right. So the first thing I sought out when we got settled was, where is my local yarn store? And I found it here right down the street. And I go there often, and they have knit nights that I started to attend, even in that kind of scary kind of, oh, I'm going to meet all these new people. You have the knitting, right? So you sat there, and even though I was nervous going into that situation, meeting all new people, my hands were busy, right? And so you talk as you
Right,
work. So you're right. That's fascinating.
right. And I cannot tell you how many people I've met on airplanes just because I
Yeah.
pulled out my knitting, and somebody comes over and says, "Oh, look, I have my knitting too." And as my husband jokes with me, and suddenly you have a new best friend.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So now, I understand what you're saying about how, the action specifically in knitting by using the two needles and both your hands. But what about like things like crochet or things like that, where yes, okay, you've only got the one hook, but you're actually using your other hand, to hold the yarn and to create tension. Is that the same sort of thing?
No, it's
No?
not the
Okay.
same, because you're holding, well, first of all, let me say that people have tried to teach me how to crochet. I have taken classes. I am at the point where I can do a basic crochet edge,
Right.
but when it comes time to sit and practice, I say, no, I'd rather knit.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can't really speak to crochet, except that you're talking about holding the tension. And what we're doing in knitting is we are constantly alternating. We're using
Okay.
that bilateral stimulation.
Okay.
And so it's a different process. And as I said, if you want to crochet, great.
Yeah.
I am all for doing anything that is calming, that helps you feel better.
So
But
How do
it's
you
not quite the same benefit.
how do you incorporate that in with clients? Like, do you use that as a therapeutic tool
If they are
if
interested,
they're interested?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, there's only so I do need to do the work of therapy,
Right.
but doing this can be part of the work of therapy. And so I may say to them, if they're really, really interested and they say, I don't know how to get started, I will tell them just go buy a pair of size 7 needles and a pair and a ball of
Yeah.
worsted weight yarn. And because this is a therapeutic process, I will show you, and if you like it, then I can help give you resources for where to
Right.
really learn.
That's amazing. How do you I'm just thinking back to when I was, 6 or 7, however old I was, and my grandma was teaching me to knit and how frustrated I was. Right, and how, the stitches were so tight on the needle that I couldn't get the other needle into the stitches, and, eventually, of course, through practice, as you know, you get better at that, and then it's not such a chore to try and get this done. So, you know, how do you get your clients past that initial kind of hump of learning and not I can just picture being so stressed out and coming to coming to you for therapy and trying to get that darn needle into the stitch, right?
The other side of that is it gives them something else to focus on and it gets them out of what they're perseverating on.
Okay, yeah,
And as long as they're not getting too frustrated, as long as they understand it as a learning process that takes practice,
right.
then they don't have to get caught up in the frustration.
Hmm. Yeah, and I can really, really relate to what you're saying about y- you know the process of getting into the knitting and just kind of going with the flow, right? What happens for me a lot of times is my best design ideas come out of a 4 or 5 hour, relaxation time with just my knitting, where you're not consciously, like, I'm not consciously thinking about, okay, I'm going to design a new sock pattern and it's going to have this and it's going to have this. But as I'm knitting, there's something going on in the background that I'm not consciously aware of. But then all of a sudden the next day, I sit down and I write it all out. So obviously the action, like the meditative action perhaps, of just sitting quietly frees up whatever else is going on so the creative process can work. I mean, I don't know the medical technical aspects of all of that, but there has to be something in that freeing up of the brain power that you're using by
Mhm.
sitting, right?
Well, in it's called being in flow.
In flow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
flow.
like
And
that.
there's a book, I think it's called Flow, that talks about the process of just really getting absorbed into an activity, and the creativity takes over and opens things in your brain that maybe you didn't know was there. I write like that as well.
Okay.
I do a lot of professional writing, and I also just write personal
Mhm.
memoir kind of pieces. And I am not somebody who sits down and says, okay, I'm going to write 3 pages today. What happens with me is when I'm walking, especially when I'm walking on a beach, that is my biggest place of being
Mm,
in flow. I'll be walking along just seemingly thinking of nothing. And all of a sudden, I'll get these word bubbles in my head and I'll get patterns of language and things will start coming together. And then I go and sit down and start writing.
right. That happens to me in yoga sometimes when I'm in shavasana,
Mhm.
totally relaxing after a practice. I get those thought bubbles. Yeah.
Right. And I think creative people, people who are inherently creative, have their own ways of getting in flow. Another way I get in flow, believe it or not, I hope this doesn't sound creepy, is in the shower.
Yeah.
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 When I was writing my book, there were times when I would get to the end of a chapter and I just didn't have the words to finish the
Mhm.
last paragraph or two. And I would go get in the shower
Mhm.
because I knew just being in the shower with the water running
Yeah.
over me was going to open it up and give me what I needed.
Isn't that amazing? Wow. So if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who um was thinking or was coming to you for therapy about whatever it is, whether it be, the gray divorce or um any other type of work that you would be doing with a client, one piece of advice about knitting that you would give to that person, what would it be?
That it's just knitting.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
If you screw up, nobody will die.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I like that. And you can pull it out and do it again, right? You're right. It's not the end of the world. So,
Now, I will, if I could just tell you a
yeah,
brief story
please.
though. Along about 20 years ago, I was working with a teenager who ended up having to go into inpatient therapy. And we had talked a lot about knitting, and she kept saying she wanted to do it, but then she didn't want to do it enough to sit down and work
Mhm.
with it. But really, she was a perfectionist. And one of my favorite therapy jokes is, do you know how to kill a perfectionist? Tell them to do the best they can.
Oh,
So, she didn't want to do anything that she could not do perfectly. So she ended up having to go to inpatient therapy. And when she came back, she was so excited. She said, they taught me to knit while I was in inpatient therapy. And I made this scarf that I'm giving to my mother for Christmas. And she held up the scarf and she said, and I looked at it and I saw that there was a drop stitch.
mhm,
And so I, of course, said, this is wonderful. I'm so glad that you are
mhm.
enjoying this. This is going to give you so many hours of calm and pleasure, not to mention pretty things. And then I very tactfully asked her, would you like me to show you how to pick up that stitch and fix that? And she said, oh no, I'm going to leave it because one of the things I learned in the hospital was to let go of some of my perfectionist tendencies. So now I'm in this big conflict because the therapist in me is thinking, good for you.
Yeah.
And the knitter is thinking, but your mother is going to put that on and the whole thing will unravel.
Yep. Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Oh, that's awesome. So, um, the last time you and I talked, you shared with me something that you had written, which is quite profound, and I would love for you to share that with us again, if you are so inclined to do so.
I would love to.
Thank you. All right. So, give a little background on this before you read in.
Okay. I wrote this after my grandmother died in 2007. Yeah, 2007. So this is not a new piece. Um, but my grandmother and I were very, very close. And as I said at the beginning, She was an unbelievable knitter.
Excellent.
And this piece is called Knitting with Nanny. Life with Nanny, my grandmother, was punctuated by the clicking of knitting needles. Nanny's hands were never idle. They worked when she rode in the passenger seat of the car, as she waited to be dealt into her poker games, and especially while sitting poolside at her condo complex. Each generation of my family produces one knitter, a woman who wraps the others with love in the form of baby blankets, children's sweaters emblazoned with ballerinas or dinosaurs, glittery scarves to glam up the plainest of coats. I inherited Nanny's joy in the tactile, the colors, and most of all, the way the repetitive movements quieted the mind, knit, purl, like meditation or a prayer. Together, we would sit by the pool on chaise lounges, endless inches of garments spooling from the needles as we chatted. Sometimes we knit silently, breathing in chlorine and connection. Who's it for? Nanny would ask when I pulled a ball of yarn from my knitting bag and cast on stitches to start a new sweater. Her eyes sparkled like topaz when I worked on a piece for myself or my son, but her brows furrowed if I was making something for one of the many men who left eventually, not tied by the strands I weaved for them. I finally loved a man who stayed and knew he was the right one when Nanny suggested, "Why don't you make him a nice sweater?" Carpal tunnel syndrome eventually forced Nanny to retire her needles. Still, I would knit at the pool while she watched. Occasionally, she'd ask, "Who's it for?" And I'd say, "It's for you." And her topaz eyes danced even as her brow creased. Love and loss. Last year, as Nanny lay dying, I'd bring my needles to her bedside, the click-clacking speaking for us. Knit, purl. I love you. Farewell. My 6-year-old niece, Tia, seems to be the yarn bearer of her generation. Sometimes she knits with me, her curly hair bouncing as she throws the yarn like it's a boomerang, tongue sticking out of the side of her mouth. Knit, purl. At other times, she watches and asks questions, as if she understands she's the chosen one and needs to absorb the lessons. There is little silent communication with Tia, who chats as if she is on deadline to use all her words, but we share a secret language. When I begin a new piece, Tia asks, "Who's it for?" She giggles with the glee of a 6-year-old who's in on the joke. Together we yell, "It's for Nanny."
That's that's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Oh, I'm so happy to have shared it because it's a piece I think you can tell it is so near and dear to me, and
Yeah.
I haven't really had an opportunity to share it before.
And and I think your words are the words that so many of us kind of we encompass what you just read, what you wrote. It's that's how it is for many of us, right? But you have articulated it so beautifully that I know for me, it that could have been my story, right? So I think, like the beauty of the craft being handed down and somebody specific in each generation kind of being the bearer of that in a family, right? That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, well, Linda, thank you so much for sharing all that you shared today. It has been informative and lovely and lovely. Any final words that you have to share with us?
Well, if I could tie this in together just a
Yeah.
little bit with my book, at the risk of not sounding like shameless promotion.
Oh.
We've talked about the benefits of therapeutic
Mhm.
knitting, and when we're talking about gray divorcing over age 50, we are often talking about women, and I'm saying women because I'm assuming it's mostly women
Mhm.
watching this podcast. I know not all, but it's probably the larger demographic, that you may have spent much of your life engaged in caring for your house, caring for your children, caring for your spouse. And if you are going through a later life divorce, or even if you're looking at widowhood or for other reasons being alone, please consider knitting as one way to build a community, build a support system, and also have something to hand down to your grandchildren.
Amazing. Yeah, so true. So true. So I will ensure that the link to your book, Gray Divorce, everything you need to know about later life breakups is down below in the show notes. And I'll also put your contact information there too for your website, Linda. So if people are interested in reaching out to get more information and perhaps chat with you on their own, they can certainly do that. So thank you very much for being here today. This has been a great time together for sure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really a lot of fun.
Excellent. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon. Take good care and keep knitting.